Welcome back, and thanks for listening to another episode of Keeping Ag Real. I am your hostess, Jenny Schweigert. Keeping Ag Real is part of the Farm and Rural Ag Network. For more information, you can visit farmruralag.com and learn about other podcasts and vlogs. Before we dive into today's episode, which is all about milk, I want to put a little teaser out there and encourage you to tune in next week when we have a couple of big announcements for some new projects that are happening with Keeping Ag Real. So today's episode is in a bit of a different format than what you normally are accustomed to. It'll be a part interview, but it's also going to be part of myself sharing some of my own research behind milk and the milk industry. Since the audience of Keeping Ag Real is a mix of folks from the agriculture industry as well as those who are outside the agriculture industry and generations removed from the farm, I'm going to provide a little background information on what is currently happening with milk and dairy. Following the theory of supply and demand, currently the dairy industry is experiencing a surplus of milk, which has been caused by numerous factors. There's a decrease in consumption due to alternative milk products, and that's kind of where the entire segment began. There's a limited amount of exports because not only do we have a surplus in the United States, but there's surpluses in many other countries as well that we would normally ship to and export to. It's a surplus that's worldwide, and the competition globally is fierce to sell milk. The inspiration behind the episode, as I mentioned, did come from consumption and my curiosity behind the consumption of alternative milk products. Here in the U.S., traditional milk sales have fallen 7% annually on average over the last 4 years, and that is according to data from Nielsen. A few weeks ago, a product called A2 caught my eye on social media. I wanted to see if it's a product that can help our surplus problem here in the U.S. So as I learned more about A2, I discovered that it was started in New Zealand and Australia. Been around for a number of years. It's just starting to really become popular here in the U.S. To provide the science behind milk and A2, I was able to interview Dr. Chris Cifelli, who oversees dairy and public health research, and his goal is to provide scientific evidence that then can be used to protect and promote dairy in public policy. So let's go ahead and let's join Chris, and then we'll return to discuss other factors and alternatives that are affecting dairy consumption.
When it comes to milks, we welcome and are excited by any innovation in the dairy aisle. We know that children and adults are not meeting their dairy needs. They're consuming less than the recommended amounts. So anything that can help people go down the milk aisle and choose milk is welcome. That said, it's important to remember that all the cow's milks, whether you're talking flavored, lactose-free, conventional, whole, or A2 in this case, provide the same complete package of 9 essential nutrients that contribute to health and wellness. In regards to your specific question, I think A2, it got started in the New Zealand, Australia part of the world and has kind of made its way, east, right? I'm trying to picture a globe in my head, to the U.S. I think it's been a couple years now that they've been established, and I think they're headquartered out in California, if I'm not mistaken.
What makes it different than what we would normally see on the shelves at the grocery store?
So surprisingly, there's really just one difference, and that's in the type of beta casein that is found in the milk. So as I said, all the other nutrients, all the other fat, lactose, everything else is the same, but there's one difference in this type of protein, the casein protein. And that is the difference between what's called an A1 and A2 variant. So conventional milk that we buy in the store, or you could buy in the store, is usually a mix of those two types of casein, the A1 and A2. In contrast, the A2 milk that is only that A2 product. But again, both are both caseins are exactly the same in terms of being a complete protein, a high-quality protein, and nothing else is different between the two milks, just that protein.
What's the benefit of just having the A2 protein versus both?
From a science perspective, I would say right now there's limited evidence to say that the A2 milk is more beneficial or better for you than the A1 milk. What they have claimed and they have are hypothesizing is that it offers some digestive and anti-inflammatory benefits. But as I said, I think the science to date is really limited on this. And I don't think the science would suggest that you should switch your milk for any kind of health benefit at this point.
As far as you have seen in any research, someone like myself, I have Crohn's disease, and then I have a brother-in-law who's lactose intolerant. It really wouldn't make that big of a difference for either of us.
So I have not seen any studies that have looked at either of those two conditions. So both A1 and A2 milks would have the same amount of lactose in them. So if you're lactose intolerant, you would assume that both milks would impact you the same. So your brother would probably be better off having a lactate or a filtered milk that has the lactose removed. Obviously Crohn's disease, and you live with it, Jenny, and I don't, so I'm not trying to obviously characterize it wrongly, but it's a hard disease to live with, and it's a major digestive disorder. And they have not looked at any patients with Crohn's disease to see if one milk is better than the other. I think obviously, and you probably have tried different dairy products to find the ones that work best for you to keep getting that nutrient-rich dairy into your diet. And
Yes.
That's what I would suggest for anybody with that condition.
Why did they develop this A2 milk?
That's a great question, and I don't really know the answer for sure. I mean, I think that they probably feel that it is beneficial. And again, we welcome innovation in that way. But they just right now the science is limited to support that.
And when you say they, are you talking about the company that is behind A2?
Yes, the A2 Milk Corporation. I'm sorry. Yes, yeah, that's who I meant with they.
But it's really a pretty big deal in Australia and New Zealand and even China. I guess there must be some kind of correlation, whether it's even this, if the science doesn't support it, there must be some reason that consumers are really buying into this. And I've seen, some testimonials about how this has just helped them be able to have cereal again and things like that. You said there's really no science behind that.
Yeah, I guess I would say, what you just said, I would take as good news, obviously, that people are finding ways to get more milk and dairy into their diet. And if they perceive a benefit from drinking A2 milk in Australia, New Zealand, U.S., China, wherever, that's great news. I mean, we know that milk provides 9 essential nutrients that are needed for health and wellness. My role here at NDC as Vice President of Nutrition Research is to really just look at the science, and I would say that they just need more controlled, rigorous clinical trials to really support some of the things that they're saying about the benefits of A2 milk. But again, we welcome innovation, and we're happy more people are choosing milk and dairy products, and
Sure.
That is the most important thing.
Where can you find A2 milk if we wanted to test it out?
That's a good question. I in my suburb of Chicago, I have not seen it in our grocery stores. However, I know a colleague of mine who lives in a different suburb has seen it in one of his kind of like specialty grocery stores. So, I'm not sure if it can be something you can order through Amazon or not. I don't know. I'm sure we could probably find that out for you if needed.
What are some other, innovations that are out there that are hopefully going to help increase the consumption of milk, especially in schools with children?
Yeah, that's a really important and good question. As a father of three boys ranging from kindergarten to middle school, making sure that they eat healthy and get proper nutrition during that critical growth and development period is important. I think you're seeing innovation in the dairy aisle through value-added milks. You're seeing products like Fairlife that have added protein to remove lactose and try to appeal to different populations. So I think the dairy category is working hard in that. I think a lot of it is also one of the things we study in nutrition is obviously behavior, and it's just getting people to think healthy and choose healthy products, and getting them to consume milk. I know for schools in particular, there was some exciting news that just recently that going into this year now, you can add 1% flavored milk back into schools. That's really exciting. We know that kids, prefer the 1% flavored over the non-fat flavored, and little things like the round resealables as opposed to the cartons that we probably struggled to open as kids. Those little things make differences. So I see progress there, and as a dad and a nutritionist, I'm really hoping that we can continue to make strides to get kids to consume more milk and dairy.
I'm going to back up just for a second here. So how do they, I guess, once the milk is at the dairy, is there a scientific process that the milk goes through to remove the A1?
Oh, that's a good question. So from my understanding, you can breed cows to only produce the A2 casein protein. So the A2 Milk Corporation or someone related to them offers a kit, so you could test your cows to see the type of protein that they make, and you could then obviously I'm not a farmer. I'm gonna so I don't want to misspeak, but you can then genetically select to breed for cows that only produce the A2 variety.
Interesting. Do you know how they came upon that? I'm just thinking, I guess, as someone that is growing dairy heifers, how? I'm just trying to wrap my head around that.
I think certain breeds are more naturally produce the A2 variety. So I would imagine probably how they found it was that those breeds, and I think they're typically Jersey cows. They were probably comparing the Jersey cows to other milks, and that's probably then they just were, went down and continued to look at it from that way. So I take it from your response that you have Jersey cows.
We do, yes. Mainly just heifers. We don't milk. The milking part of the operation was retired in 2013. However, we do continue to grow some replacement heifers, and it allows the kids to keep showing and the farm name to keep going.
Yeah.
I guess my next question would be, and I don't know if you can answer this, but this is just a question that I've wanted to have answered. When you're comparing milk from a cow to almond, quote unquote, milk or cashew or whatnot, what are the processes? I mean, that I would assume is highly processed to go from the nut to the actual milk.
Yeah, so I think what you're asking is obviously, cow's milk is, milked from the cow, and it undergoes, a level of processing because, all food, processing is an important part of food safety and packaging and storage. But, comparing it to the different types of alternative beverages that start as different plant-based products typically and are transformed into a beverage. I don't know this step-by-step. We have colleagues here that are in product research. I can say, though, that when you compare the nutrient package of cow's milk to rice beverage, almond beverage, and some of the others out there, there really is no comparison. The milk has 9 essential nutrients and contains high quality protein, and a lot of times these other beverages don't either have the same amount of protein or certainly don't have the same number and amount of nutrients. They tend to match the calcium and maybe the vitamin D, but they don't have the same amounts, all of them, of vitamin A and potassium and all these other great nutrients that you get with milk. So while I can't give you the answers to that, how the processing is done, I can tell you that people should really, if they're worried about their health and nutrition, should really look at the label and compare the two, because a lot of times I think they perceive them to be more healthy and more nutritious when they're really not.
I think maybe the nutrients that really come to mind when you're talking about milk, automatically my brain goes to calcium and vitamin D. There are like you said, there's 7 other very important nutrients in the components of milk. And it sounds as though those are nutrients which are not in these other alternative beverages.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, so milk, and we say they have the 9 essentials, and what that really means is they are a good or excellent source. They provide at least 10, more than 10 or more than 20% of your dairy value, and that is hard to replicate in any other food. So you're right. They match some of the nutrients, but it's hard for them to match all of that nutrient profile in milk. And one of the other things too, I think what people don't always think of, and what's really exciting is, you get all that nutrition for about 26 cents, on average. So for a little over a quarter, you can get a cup of milk that provides 9 essential nutrients. Less than $1 a day, you can have your 3 servings, and that's huge because some of these other products also are more expensive, and that's something that people have to consider.
So what else should consumers know about A2 or some of the new innovations that are out there in the dairy industry?
Again, I just will reiterate that, we're welcome all innovation in this aisle. We want people to drink more milk. Milk and dairy foods are recommended by the dietary guidelines for Americans. They've been in there since the beginning, and since 2005, they've recommended 3 servings for adults because of the unique nutrient package it has. So we want more people to drink milk. Just for any of these, anytime there's innovation, just always, I fall back on the science. What does the science say? And right now, the science supports, milk, cheese, and yogurt, conventional for health benefits, such as reduced risk of type 2 diabetes or helping reduce hypertension and blood pressure. So it's a simple thing, picking up a cup of yogurt, drinking a cup of milk, weaving in some cheese, but really has, I truly believe, impacts on your health and will help you live a healthier life.
What about like sour cream and cottage cheese, some of those other dairy products? Are they fulfilling your nutrient guidelines?
So they'll have different nutrient profiles for sure. Obviously cottage cheese is mostly protein, but it does have some minerals in it as well. It won't have the exact same 9 essential nutrients, but it is a great source of protein. I know that's something I enjoy. I like that kind of salty kick it kind of has, and if you kind of mix in berries or something, it's quite delicious. Sour cream, is something you can enjoy, but when we really talk about meeting guidelines, we're really focused in on milk, cheese, and yogurt. Those are the ones that we encourage. I think there should be a 4th, which is ice cream, but
I was just going to say the same thing.
Everybody needs a little indulgent treat, but we typically think of milk, cheese, and yogurt as those 3. But there's nothing wrong with cottage cheese. There's nothing wrong with kefir or fermented milks, even a little bit of frozen yogurt. All of those provide some semblance of nutrition because they come from milk and and get milk's benefits from that.
Sure. Well, we are at the end of our time together. If people are looking for more information, where should we direct them on dairy in general?
So I would direct people to dairygood.org. That's a great starting resource. If they're interested more in some of the science, they can go to nationaldairycouncil.org, and there's a great search function where you could search, say you're interested in dairy and blood pressure, you can put that in, and there'll be blogs or different science summaries. So those 2 websites would have a lot of information that people would look for.
Very good. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you have a very busy schedule and adding in some of the science behind what it is that we're drinking and consuming every day. It always gives people a little bit more comfort.
Thank you, Jenny, for giving me the opportunity. And really, I'd like to just take a quick second just to thank all the dairy farmers out there who support us and who we're doing this work on their behalf. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you, and hope we can do this again soon.
Thank you once again to Chris for helping us out in talking about the science behind dairy and specifically the A2 product. So this is the point where I'm going to share my own opinion, especially where it comes to food choice and consumers wanting choice. As you go through and you look at the product of A2, you see that the company is like other companies. More and more are jumping on board because consumers want choice. The problem is, if we're going to give consumers what they want, shouldn't that be based on information that's accurate Morally, yes, it should be based on information that's accurate. Companies are looking through a business lens and they see the opportunity to increase company profits rather than combat the supply problem. I guess my big question is with this A2 product is it would require cattle that are bred to only have the A2 protein. Most of the cattle in the United States are not cattle that have just the A2 protein. So that's really not going to do anything for our current surplus problem, except for possibly even add to the problem even more because we're adding another choice to the table. My attention on the surplus issue was then drawn to food labeling. And before we get into food labeling, specifically the dairy alternatives, I do want to mention that the A2 company makes two claims that are rather misleading. So misleading, in fact, that if you go and start reading articles, there's retailers who are selling the product claiming it to be organic when it is not organic. And those two labels are not treated with added hormones or RBST, and it's antibiotic free. All milk sold is antibiotic free. A great deal of the milk that you will find in the stores is also not treated with added hormones or RBST. So really, essentially, these two claims are no different than the milk that has both proteins in it. So I just wanted to point those two items out. Moving on to labeling the milk alternatives. And when I'm talking about milk alternatives, I'm talking about soy milk, almond, cashew, rice. These are all plant-based products that go through high processing and are truly not milk and should be considered beverages. As I started investigating, I was a little surprised to find that President Trump actually signed a bill that directs the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, to take action against mislabeled imitation dairy foods. That was back in March of this year. You would think by now this law would be enforced. However, it is not. The FDA Commissioner, Dr. Scott Gottlieb, has said that the agency is actively exploring whether consumers are being misled by the use of terms such as milk. So rather than enforcing the law that has passed by the Senate, passed by the House, signed by President Trump, the commissioner has indicated that the FDA would likely be subject to a legal challenge from groups such as the Plant-Based Food Association, or PBFA. Their executive director, Michelle Simon, has indicated that they are not concerned because they know consumers are not confused. So now I put the ball in your court and ask you to sound off. Head over to Twitter and tweet me at keepingagreal and let me know if you know the difference between all of the different alternative beverages such as almond milk, soy milk, cashew milk, pea milk, rice milk, and cow's milk. You can also head over to Facebook and search for Keeping Ag Real's Facebook page, where you can then leave your comments. I look forward to collecting all of your input. In the show notes, I will be leaving some information on how you can contact your congressmen and women to ask them why the FDA is not enforcing the law which has been signed by President Trump. There will also be links to various articles talking about the situation. I really appreciate you listening to today's show, especially with the different format and allowing me to share my opinion on the subject. And I look forward to hearing your opinions on the subject. As a quick reminder, next week we will be announcing some really cool projects that are coming up. To stay connected, you can also visit the website keepingagreal.com. Thanks, and until next week, keep it real.